Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Hurricane Watch Team is here with your latest update on Typhoon Wipha, which has in fact made landfall in China. We're going to continue to talk about its impacts to China, where it's going to go next. We're going to talk about the forecast track here from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, and also take a look at some of the models and see how much it could possibly intensify before making landfall there in Vietnam. Here's the latest forecast track. It did make landfall just to the west of Hong Kong. It will continue to produce heavy rain and flooding across southern China. And it will intensify once it emerges back over this, I believe, the South China Sea there. And then depending on how much it will intensify and how long over the water will determine how strong the storm could intensify back up to. However, the biggest threats and risks are going to be that heavy rain and flooding for Vietnam, Thailand, as well as Cambodia. So given this, we're going to take a look at the forecast models, give a better idea of where this storm is going to go. However, the HWRF model, I think, is a little bit on the excessive side. Do not think it's going to be this strong once it emerges, or once it makes landfall there in Vietnam. Does show the storm intensifying quite a bit, down to the 940s. It actually looks like it stalls because of high pressure. If that does happen, and it is over these much warmer waters, there is a much higher chance of this storm intensifying quickly. And there you go. You could see getting down about 935 millibars upon landfall there. There it looks like they're in Vietnam. So very, very intense. This one model. We take a look at the winds here by going to the lower dynamics. So you can see those winds being does intensify quite a bit. 110, 111, 115 knots would be a category 4 at 130 miles per hour. So if that were to be the case, this would be a very powerful storm. But as you can see here, we go to hour 0. It is at 75 knots, which is already a little bit stronger than where we are right now at 65 knots. But as you can see, it does expecting it to weaken over China there. But once it moves back over the waters, it does intensify back into typhoon status and quickly intensifies there as it approaches Vietnam. That's just one of the models that we're looking at here. Most of the other models don't show it to be as strong or as intense. As you can see here, it does show it is expected to re-intensify back into typhoon status with winds of 75 and 80 miles an hour upon landfall. But again, I think the biggest risk is going to be that heavy rainfall, that flooding that we're going to see there in Vietnam once it makes landfall again. The GFS is much more lenient with this. Shows really 60 to 65 mile an hour tropical storm upon landfall. They're 52 knots, about 60 miles an hour, miles per hour upon landfall. But didn't even show it actually reaching typhoon status here, only at 50 knots. So this could be a little bit on the weaker side. So again, we do think this is going to re-intensify to a typhoon. I believe could possibly be as strong as 80 to 90 miles per hour. I think is the most likelihood of how strong this will be. But again, we're just gonna have to really watch the storm, where it's gonna go, regardless of how strong the storm is going to be. The biggest threats and the biggest risks is going to be that heavy rain and flooding. Again, water is always the number one threat when it comes to tropical systems. You get that heavy rain, you can get lots of flooding, bayous, creeks, rivers can quickly fill up and overflow and flood lower lying areas. You can even have that storm surge, so you can have salt water flooding there right along the coastline. Wall of water comes in, pushes that water in. Here, if we take a look at, especially makes landfall farther north. I gotta look at this a little closer here. Makes landfall farther north up here. You could really get some of that water funneling into that bay area right there, and to the seaports there, and then it can kind of squeeze the water and cause the water to rise up higher, which can cause more inland flooding from salt water, so that'd be storm surge. Now again, regardless of how strong this is going to be, I think heavy rainfall and flooding is going to be the number one biggest threat. Again, here is the latest satellite imagery of Typhoon Wipha. Again, we're looking at those winds at about 65 knots, 75 miles an hour. We do have big bursts of convection in portions of western China, southwestern China here. So that does indicate some pretty heavy rainfall and some flooding. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to go to radar and look at the rainfall from this and take a look at the radar. So again, we look at that where we're seeing some of the bigger convection. We're starting to get those heavier bands of rain developing in portions of western China there. This is the area where we're seeing the center of circulation, where we're having the strongest winds right around that center. We're having some pretty strong gusty winds there. So I'm actually going to see if I can pause this here on the last frame here and talk a little bit about what we got here in terms of the radar. So again, this is the center of circulation here. We're having the heaviest of the rain in this area, and again, right here, the wind is it's going in this direction, so we would have some negative storm surge, but we would have lots of heavy rain where this moves in this area, but where we would have some storm surge in this area. Thankfully, this is farther away, so we are probably still seeing some sort of funneling of some water right to the west of Hong Kong. So I do expect that there's still quite some gusty winds there. Nothing super duper strong. I don't think anything over 50, 60 miles an hour there. Definitely some strong winds there. Probably still 70 mile an hour sustained winds, with those gusts reaching 80 miles per hour. This is going to continue to move off to the west, possibly. We do expect it, again, moving back over the waters and re-intensifying, reaching that typhoon status. But again, it is making that way off to the west. We are going to take a look at the West Pacific here and get an idea of the entire region in terms of get a better idea for a forecast. So here it is. We do have some high pressure here, but it's relatively weak. 1017 millibars is what the high pressure shows. The air pressure at sea level on average is 1013 millibars. So this really isn't much of a difference. So it really looks like that really continues to push it farther west into Vietnam. This gives us a better idea of just the direction it's going to go. And again, it does show some intensification, 985, and then weakening back into the 990s once it makes that landfall there in Vietnam. Again, we don't expect this to stick around. We could expect it to continue to move on and completely fall apart once it gets into Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, fall apart. We could certainly see some more storms popping up, but that's later down the line. We want to mainly focus on Wipha right now, as it is currently impacting. So that is really what we have with Wipha. Again, we do expect this storm continue to produce heavy rain and flooding over southern China, moving back over the South China Sea and re-intensifying into a typhoon and having its impacts into Vietnam. Again, here it is right here. Vietnam, Laos, and then perhaps Thailand could also be impacted by this storm. So like I was saying earlier, we could have some more storms popping up. This one could particularly be impacting the islands of Japan, as well as perhaps a landfall there, eastern China, just south of Shanghai. We do have other storms that could develop, but those are pretty far down the line still. Our next big storm is popping up right here. I think it's is it 96W? Let me get my facts straight. 97W, excuse me. Again, here are the latest models, kind of all over the place, but does look like it's going to spare between Japan and Taiwan, but a few models do show it making landfall there, close to Shanghai, China. We're gonna have to continue to continue to watch this. The models are just all over the place because there isn't a closed low. It isn't organized. It's just a cluster of thunderstorms. If we take a look at the models, it will give us a better idea of where the storm could be going. Which I think there's only one model, and that's the GFS model. Does not really get its act together at all. There's that landfall there in Shanghai, just south of Shanghai, China. We do get some pretty heavy rain moving through the Japanese islands there. We take a look at those winds at the surface. Very not super duper strong, very relatively weak, and doesn't even show it as a tropical storm making landfall there in Shanghai, China. However, I do believe the biggest threats, again, like always, is going to be that heavy rain and perhaps some flooding there south of Shanghai, China. And that's the latest wind field. Again, majority of the hurricane force winds are off the coast. However, we do have that 50-knot wind field just west there of, just west there of Hong Kong. And then you have that 34-knot wind field there, including Hong Kong and areas east of that. This will continue to move westward, west-southwestward over southern China, and then again move back over the waters, which is something we're going to have to monitor in terms of how much it's going to intensify. The sea surface temperatures are very, very warm. I'm going to... yellow would be easiest here. Do you think it could move something like this? So we could see some, again, into some more warmer sea surface temperatures. Again, we're really going to have to monitor just how long it stays over that water, how quickly it intensifies. The atmospheric conditions do appear suitable and conducive for tropical cyclone development, and where we could see the storm reorganize and re-intensify perhaps into a typhoon, which is something that I have mentioned quite a bit. And those are the forecast tracks. Again, not a lot of time over water. In about 2 days, it does look like it's going to make landfall there in northern Vietnam, and then it'll continue to make its way westward as it moves into the more mountainous areas, and it'll completely fall apart, we expect. Again, here's the latest forecast track by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Again, moving there. We're really going to see a bit of a dip south because of high pressure. Could suppress it southward. Again, something we're going to have to watch and monitor. But again, when we're taking a look at that new system, 97W, it does not appear that it is very organized. It's kind of just not very well developed right now. So that's why the forecast models and the spaghetti models are just all over the place. We'll have to wait for some more organization with this system before we have a better idea of exactly not just where it's going to go, but how strong it's going to be. I'm going to end the video off here. Again, this has been the Hurricane Watch Team. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the Hurricane Watch Team, your source for cyclone information. As always, stay safe and stay aware. And peace out.